All right, hey guys, sorry about the technical difficulties. Yeah, I don't know. It's just frustrating, but we'll do what we can. Continue to push forward. I'm gonna re-record the other lecture and stuff, so let's just stick with this one. And here we go. So we're now moving on to World War One, the Great War. You guys learned about this in world history. This is going to be a review again. Okay, so I'm not going to be going over every little detail. A lot of things I will skip over because I'm really just trying to focus on what you're going to be tested on. So please take a close look at this. I want you to focus on a few main things: the causes of World War One, how World War One develops into a modern war, the new technology and weapons that are used in World War One, the Great War, and also the effects coming out of it. How does it impact society overall? It is called the Great War, the war to end all wars. No other war has been seen at this scale. Europe hasn't seen this type of continental war, in about half a century, and so the balance of power is going to be shifted, and the political structure and the nation states and the borders it's all going to change from this. Okay, so that's the effects. All right, so the causes of World War One comes down to this acronym Mania. Some of you guys have maybe heard about this or learned Maine. Okay, but these are the first four are going to be the long-term causes. So militarism, alliances, national imperialism. These are the long-term causes, and then the immediate cause is going to be the assassination. We're going to be covering all the causes today. We're just going to fly through them because essentially this is at its bare bones what we need to understand. So the first one is militarism. Militarism is the glorification of armed strength and ideals of war. And so what's going to happen is that there's going to be an arms race where they're going to build up military arms, and through that, as they have stronger military and military arms, it's going to kind of like put fear in the rivals and saying like, hey, don't mess with us, we're big bad, we're strong now. Okay, and by having a strong military, you can also protect your colonies. Something else about militarism is that through World War One, there's going to be a new thing called conscription. We'll get more into the next lecture, but really, the army size is going to be growing tremendously because the civilian population is growing as well in the millions, and so you're going to see armies with soldiers with sizes of millions of soldiers at a time. Very vast, very big. Okay, so some background of how the Anglo-German arms race between the British and the Germans came from when Germany is going to surpass Great Britain industrially. We talked about this, right? So by 1890s, 1900, Germany is going to be number one in steel production, and really its productivity is going to be much higher. And so the British fleet have always been very strong, right? Ever since Napoleon days and stuff, and Queen Elizabeth days. And so the British Navy had always had a policy where they would want to have their navy, their fleet, larger than the combined fleets of two rival nations. Okay, so if you have two competing other nations, Great Britain saying essentially we want to double that and we want to beat that. Okay, 1898. Wilhelm II, okay, is going to now say, well, because we're strong, right, we're going to prove our strength, we're going to invest in our own navy. And so Germany is going to look to protect their trade that's going on worldwide, their colonies, through having a strong navy. And so through that, you're going to see ships called dreadnoughts. They're like kind of these immense battleships, as you can see right there, and they had really good firing range. These are the type of ships that are basically destroying all the ones in Asia, and it's very powerful. Okay, as far as militarism as an ideal that a lot of governments are pursuing, okay, there are some that are anti-militarist, which is one Austrian novelist. Her name is Bertha von Suttner. She is a pacifist, and so she is not promoting, she is anti-militarism. She's going to be the first woman to win the Nobel Peace Prize, and she wrote Lay Down Your Arms, a novel basically on trying to establish peace amongst Austria and Germany, within Austria and Germany, because they're building up all their arms. All right, next one, alliances. Alliance is basically a connection between states where they're trying to advance their common interests in protecting one another if they were to be attacked, right? So we talked about this in the last ish lecture on Africa and Bismarck and stuff. And so Bismarck had a fear, right? He's not so worried about what's going on in Africa as much as like, yeah, they're not quite competing as much as France and Great Britain are, but his main fear was what, right? He was a fear of having a war on two fronts, and that's between France and Russia. And why would France be mad at them? Franco-Prussian War. Why is Russia mad at them? Because of the Congress of Berlin, where basically Russia gets screwed. Bismarck kind of, was the one to coordinate all of that, and so Russia blamed Germany because they couldn't gain any territory in the Balkans, right? So all these alliances are going to be starting developed based upon what's in the best interest of that country. So in 1879, you have the dual alliance. This is between Germany and Austria. Bismarck is looking to basically stop the Russian expansion into the Balkans. And so the dual alliance is between these two major countries, and it's kind of setting the tone because all the other countries are going to start realizing, hey, we should have alliances too, right? Okay, and then we have the Triple Alliance that comes in 1881, and this is where Italy is going to join the Dual Alliance, and they are looking to gain some access to the Mediterranean and some African territories to colonize. All right, and then over time, okay, Bismarck, who's still around, right? Bismarck, who's still around, he actually has established a treaty, and this is an agreement in saying that neutrality is going to happen between Germany and Russia if either country went to war with another country. So if Germany went to war with France, right, Russia and Germany would stay neutral, and so this is called the Russian-German Reinsurance Treaty, and just to provide some insurance that, hey, if we go to war, we're not going to fight each other, and I think that's okay. The problem is that once Bismarck was forced to resign by Wilhelm II, who was this young guy, came to the throne, really ambitious. He refused to renew this reinsurance treaty, and so Bismarck's gone, and he's going the other way because he says, you know what? If we have a somewhat treaty, right, a peace treaty with Russia, this is essentially kind of contradictory to their alliance with Austria, and so this is where Wilhelm II kind of makes a bad move because, as power hungry as he is, as much as he loves Germany and believes that it's destined for domination. It really allowed then Russia to seek alliances elsewhere, and now Germany is just tied to mainly just Austria. Okay, and from this point on, France is going to say, hey, Austria, you're free on the market. Let's work something out. Britain, what is their position on this? Well, Britain is, up until 1891, they are the only country that is not aligned with any other country. They don't have an alliance. Okay, and so they call this a splendid isolation. They're happy by themselves. But soon after, okay, about 10 years later, you have the Anglo-Japanese alliance that comes. And like, why would even the Japanese and Great Britain really want to have terms together? Well, Great Britain felt that Russia was a threat to India, and so this is where they have the first alliance. And from there, Great Britain's going to be now involved in all these alliances. And so if you kind of see, like, if I'm allying with you, and he's allying with him, and I get in a fight with him, then I get a fight with you, and it gets all tied together, and it gets all crazy. Okay, so the Entente Cordiale is in 1904, and this is where you have Britain and France finally coming together. And so the Anglo-German naval arms race is now somewhat kind of even more of a hot topic because Britain and France, as they were competing for territories in Africa, they're actually settling that. They both recognize that, okay, you own this territory, we own this territory, and they're actually more civil and working together. And eventually they're going to develop the Triple Entente, which is in 1907, Britain, France, Russia, and their goal is really to check the power of the Triple Alliance. And so here we have kind of like a Venn diagram map, right? You can kind of see the blue is the Triple Alliance and the years that they set their alliances up. And then there's some treaties with these countries. And so if you look in the middle of the main Venn diagram, this purple area, the Balkans, is what we're going to be talking about. And this is the center of World War I and how it all kind of begins. And it's because everyone's kind of tied in either directly or indirectly with the situation in the Balkans, that's how everyone just comes in, and it's kind of like a collapse. Okay, so here's a map showing the Allied powers and Central powers, right, in different colors, so we understand at least geographically what does this mean. We can see that Germany is now sandwiched, along with the Austrian-Hungarian Empire. They are sandwiched, and they will fight a two-front war, and we'll address that in the next lecture. One thing to also know is that even though there are alliances, okay, very interestingly enough, World War I was also a family struggle, and so most of the monarchs of Europe were related to who? Queen Victoria actually is related to many of the monarchs. Her children would marry other royalty and stuff, and so her grandson is Wilhelm II of Germany, right? Kaiser Wilhelm II, and her granddaughter is Alexandra, who is married to Nicholas II of Russia, Tsar Nicholas. Okay, so another thing is that Nicholas and Wilhelm II are cousins. So basically, Alexandra married kind of her cousin. I don't know. All right. Anyways, more family stuff. Edward VII and George V of Britain, they become kings of Britain later on, and they're going to become uncles to Wilhelm II. And so it's all kind of tied together, and all going to go to war with one another. And so what is this demonstrating? Well, the reasons of state, the interests of state, are actually more weighty, okay, have more weight and more value than blood. Okay, blood is thinner than the interests of state. Okay, so our next is nationalism. Our next cause is nationalism in Mania. So nationalism, when we talk about the Balkans, okay, we talked about how the Ottoman Empire is the sick man of Europe. It's slowly dying off. Okay, and so at this point, the Balkans becomes this what we call a powder keg. It's not just like any kind of powder, it's gunpowder. And so if you light and strike a match, if there's a spark in any way, this whole gunpowder, keg of gunpowder, is going to blow up. And so we talked about how Pan-Slavism was this movement that was going on of nationalism to unite the Slavic peoples, and so there's a bunch of other Slavic peoples, the Serbs, the Bosnians, the Slovenes, the Croats, and they want to have their own identity, and they even want to have, their own Slavic independence to pursue self-determination. Okay, who is their big brother that they're looking to gain support from? That is Russia, right? And so Russia is not just saying, "Oh yeah, we're Slavs," but also remember we said that Russia is engaged in trying to obtain territories in the Balkans themselves to take it away from the Austro-Hungarian Empire. Okay, so Serbia has been recognized as an independent state by the Congress of Berlin Congress of Berlin in 1878, and so at this point. There are a bunch of crises that break out in the Balkans, okay? And so what type of crisis is going on? Well, in this time, the Ottoman Empire is a sick man. They're dying, and a bunch of these Balkan states, these people groups, are beginning to rise up and trying to, take over the Turkish government and to have basically their own nation states. In 1908, Austria is going to annex Bosnia-Herzegovina. Before, Bosnia-Herzegovina was just a protectorate in their control. So they would actually have access in controlling it, but it wasn't actually just part of their actual territory. And so they're looking at this point to annex it, but this would violate something that happened in the Congress of Berlin, a decision made there. And so Austria is doing this also, not just because they want to have land, but they have a fear that Serbia is influencing, the Bosnians to, unify with Serbia. And so I think Austria is pretty right, though, because Serbia is really fighting and protesting for, a Slavic state, independent Slavic state. And so at this point, World War I has not broken out, but it's just showing that there's a lot of conflict that has been going on leading up to World War I, and then it comes with the Balkan War. So the Balkan League is established, and they basically have a bunch of different countries, such as Bulgaria, Macedonia, Greece, and they're trying to basically take more land away from the Ottoman Empire. Over time, okay, as they are successful in some ways, there's going to be the Third Balkan War. Okay, the Third Balkan War is between Austria and Serbia, and this is at the point where World War One actually happened. So a much fighting and conflict has happened from 1912 to 1914, and by the Third Balkan War is where it kind of all breaks out. But then because of the system of alliances, it all kind of ties together. So why now? Why is it in the early 1900s that this whole thing is starting to happen? Well, it's because there's a lot of massive and political economic changes in Europe that has really changed society. The political ideas of liberalism and nationalism and self-determination are going on as industrialization is spreading around, right? Imperialism is happening in these remote areas, even in Europe and outside. People are being educated. They hear about these ideas. They're being influenced by it, and they are trying to fight for it. Okay, so there's non-Europeans in Africa and in Asia who are going to also demand these things too. All right, here we go. Number 4, imperialism. We went just over this. As we know, imperialism was a time where there's international rivalry. European countries are aggressively competing for foreign markets because it's lucrative for them, right? Raw materials, natural resources, new markets, the whole shebang. And so at this point, they are competing, and there are certain situations where they are seeing conflict outside of Europe in a lot of these territories. They did have the Berlin Conference, but even still, they're still land grabbing. So in 1906, there was the Algeciras Conference, which happens in Morocco. So Morocco was a place of dispute where Germany and France almost went to war. Kaiser Wilhelm II was looking to push the Moroccans to demand for independence. Britain and Italy are supporting France to take over this territory of Morocco and Tunisia, North Africa, where Germany wanted to take it away from them in this competition. And so how does France feel? How does Britain feel, right? They feel like they're overstepping their boundaries, right? And so Wilhelm II, after Bismarck's gone, is making a lot of decisions. And honestly, a lot of things that Bismarck set up, OVB, Chancellor and Master of Foreign Policy, a lot of hard work put in, and it's kind of like going all to waste because of his ambition. All right, so Germany is now seen as a political threat to dominate Europe. Britain, France, Russia, and the United States all agree that Germany is kind of on this verge of really being so power hungry that it's going to cause conflict. Germany is now basically isolated from building good relations with them that OVB has been trying to figure out the whole time. And so Germany is now making sure that they are just relying upon their main ally, which is Austria-Hungary. So you have another Moroccan crisis, and over time, basically, it didn't actually erupt, but Morocco was one of the areas where it almost went to war. Okay, so the last one is going to be the assassination. We guys learned all about this. Archduke Franz Ferdinand, he is the heir to the Austrian-Hungarian throne. Okay, so he goes down to Bosnia, right, to Sarajevo, which is the if I have a map here, which is the capital of Bosnia. And so he's trying to actually build, some type of relations, possibly provide for them even their own monarch to have self-government, right? And so as he's going down there, driving down, you have a Serbian nationalist as part of a terrorist group called the Black Hand, looking for a way to make a statement to end Austrian rule in Bosnia, because they wanted to have the Slavs there and those that are Serbian that live in Bosnia to have their own independent state. And so that's where he shot him and his wife Sophie, and they were killed. Okay, so those are the main causes, right? Some long-term, some immediate, right? What we're seeing is from that point, okay, after recognizing that, how does all the other countries react? Well, Wilhelm II is going to issue a blank check, right? A blank check meaning saying, hey, you know what, whatever you want, whatever you ask for, I got your back, and he's giving it to Austria. And so Austria is, sending an ultimatum, right? A final decision. Okay, yes or no, A or B, Austria is sending an ultimatum to Serbia and requiring Serbia to follow certain demands. Okay, some of the demands are like you must punish all anti-Austrian people and stuff. And so Serbia is actually going to agree to some extent, but does not accept their ultimatum completely, ultimately. So Serbia, in doing so, Austria says, all right, if that's the case, then here we go to war. Okay, so here I have kind of like this flowchart map thing. If you kind of see how it all starts, Austria responds in declaring war, and Austria begins to bomb Belgrade, which is the capital of Serbia. And at that point, who has Serbia's back, right? As it says right there, Tsar Nicholas II does. Russia is going to then mobilize its armies against Austria and Germany, putting its troops on its borders. France, in the sense, okay, is also going to move upon Germany because they are part of the Triple Entente with Russia. Okay, does France really care about the Serbs in the Balkans, right? And the Slavs? No, but they're part of that alliance. Okay, and then from that point on, France is on the side of Russia. They're at war, right? Germany, right, who issued that blank check, says, "Hey, we got your back." They're at war now with Russia, right? Germany is at war now with France, and they're going to declare war on France and attack Belgium, which was a neutral country, but they're going to attack Belgium and access that. We'll get into that later. And over time, what we're seeing is that Germany has essentially turned a localized war, we talked about this as the Third Balkan War, right, into a world war by issuing this whole, blank check statement and offering their services, right? And so they're attacking Belgium and France. And this point on, everyone's just kind of like a chain reaction, like chain lightning, domino effect. Everyone just piled in, and soon enough, here you have Britain that's going to declare war on Germany, and so now you have two opposing alliances. You have the Central Powers, which is the Triple Alliance. You have Germany, Austria-Hungary, and the Ottoman Empire. Bulgaria will also join the Central Powers. And the Allied powers, you have Britain, France, and Russia as the main three. Okay. Later on, you're going to have Italy join in because they're looking to gain some territory, part of the Austrian Empire. The U.S. is going to join in, and then Japan is going to join in as well. All right, so that was it for the causes of World War I. Make sure you remember Mania.